I ended up losing my dad to suicide at 9. It was really important for me after my own journey. I felt this really strong desire and obligation to do what's right. And the right thing for me at the time was creating that space for young lads especially, but just for people in general who'd been struggling with the mind.
There is a degree of accountability that needs taking at both the personal level and at a business level.
This industry is built on problem solvers. A super hyper masculine environment where banter is rife, which I think is integral. You speak to how many lads need that banter in order to turn up to work. But once it's in, it's there. And it's like PPE, it's known now. And I think that's the place that would be amazing to get to.
Welcome to today's episode of Structure Tone's podcast series. Today we're going to talk about one of our core behaviors, do what's right. And I'm speaking with Dan Wilsher of LiveDex. We'll be talking about mental health within construction and the power of storytelling and human connection. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and how
long have you got?
Got all day,
Got all day. Okay, wonderful. So my name is Daniel Wilsher. I'm the founder of LiveDex Learning, which is an organization which harnesses the power of lived experience and storytelling to cultivate human connection and human potential. I've spent probably the last 4 years as started off as the UK's youngest full-time mental health public speaker with a vision to be kind of the voice that I wish I had when I was younger in the environments that in my own journey I struggled in, education, corporate, kind of the business world. And it was really important for me after my own journey. I felt this really strong desire and obligation to do what's right. And the right thing for me at the time was creating that space for young lads especially, but just for people in general who'd been struggling with the mind. And so I ended up literally starting with a public speaking talk that was focused for education. That quickly kind of amalgamated into training 1,000 teachers on a staff CPD training. And it was so interesting because I was like, what am I going to be able to give a teacher? I've never been a teacher. You know, I haven't worked in education I haven't even been in education. I mean, I dropped out of university. So I was like, what value can I give them? And I was like, well, I know the journey through education for a kid who's been through trauma. Yeah. And I know what I probably needed from my school, which I didn't get. And I know what that experience is like. And my mum's been a teacher for 40 years. And I was like, if I can bring my story in, I can connect a why reason to all the practical things that are important. And anyway, that's where I kind of told that story piece. And I was like, there's something in storytelling. Like it's a really powerful thing, and that's where I realized the power. And so following that, ended up kind of working over the past 4 years with companies like Meta, Clifford Chance, Structure Tone, Itsu, but smaller organizations as well, growing that out into kind of management training, but then also community projects where we deliver. And so it's all about, basically, when it boils down now in terms of LiveDex, using the power of stories to influence cultivate human connection and human potential. And just to summarize the point, and I did say I speak a lot, public speaker, Dan, the reason why this is also important to me is because I ended up losing my dad to suicide at 9, you know, and the way that profound experience just impacted my journey through school, journey through college, journey through university, and then the corporate world, and you know, and then on to having to go through therapy for a year and take medication when I'd always been the lad who didn't want to. Like, that's the why reason, and for me. And so to now be in this point and to be able to share, you know, my story and be of service to others with that at the heart of it is special, really special.
Storytelling seems such a simple concept. What is it about storytelling?
When stories are told, you're 22 times more likely to retain information when it's told in story format rather than just reading or hearing facts.
Yeah.
So activates regions in the brain that, you know, memory increases, focus, learning, for example. The other side of it is, so we look at social media content. When stories are told on social media, engagement goes up by like 300%. When we're doing in-person training, we see about a 65% increase in engagement. And that was what I found in the training that I was delivering, was like, instead of just going in with the learning, let me connect first. And so when we talk a bit more on like the, not spiritual, but if we go down that route, well, what's happening in that relationship, what's happening in that environment where stories are being told, you know, it's human connection, isn't it? I'm standing in front of you as a human. I'm being vulnerable. You're feeling my energy. It's the body language. It's the eye contact. It's the moments where my voice will shake a little bit because you know that was a tough time for me. You know, I hate when people there's no dynamic range to a talk or training. We allow, with stories that are told well, we can take people on this amazing emotional journey, which connects that why reason as to why creating change or whatever key learnings we're trying to instill in the person are important. Stories help people feel normal. And in context of mental health and well-being, I think that's super important, because what is the feeling when you're struggling is that you're alone and that you're a little alien. I remember feeling as like nobody else is going through what I'm feeling at the moment. And that's why I have to hide it from everyone in corporate when I was struggling. So I have to hide it because no one's going to understand it. I'm going to be alone, and I know I'm alone in this anyway. And so the other side, so the power of storytelling is we understand what being human means. It's the ability to connect with someone in respect to those difficult things, and as a byproduct give them hope, the audience to understand, okay, actually it's not just me. And wow, these things are normal. It's that level of human connection which can be such a strong catalyst for people taking the steps that they know they need to take for themselves, but often they're struggling to find the ways to do so. In answer to your question, I am the biggest advocate for storytelling, but stories that are told correctly as well. I think there's an art to the way that they're told.
It's an interesting point. It's a simple concept, but it's not an easy thing to do. Shall we bring this to the construction industry for a moment? I think it's sort of a topic that's spoken about quite a lot. The dire state of mental health within the construction industry. What do you think it is about our industry that's made it sort of an environment where people are struggling?
So many moving parts to it, isn't there? We look at the kind of the pressure on projects. We look at everyone's competing to have the quickest projects at the cheapest time done for the client. I think we look at the sector itself, the key challenges as people know, lads away from home, lads away from the support, and women away from the support system, but on the ground, high pressure, long working hours. We have a super hyper masculine environment where banter is rife, which I think is integral. You speak to how many lads need that banter in order to turn up to work. I think that's an integral part. But I think there's also kind of a lack of skills maybe to have conversations outside of banter, and the barriers when it comes to talking about mental health. I think that can be a pressure. It maximizes the fear, isn't it, of being able to be open and talk if you are struggling with your mind. But we look at the amount of days off that workers had in construction in the UK. I think it was in 2023, it accumulated to 17.1 million days off due to stress, anxiety, or depression. That was ill health off work in the construction sector.
You've also got a lot of small businesses operating on a construction site. That sort of financial pressure that they bear, talking about competition, being in competition. And when you work for a corporate, you've got a bit of a safety net, right? You've got a benefit scheme. You've got annual leave that you're entitled to. You've got a steady income stream. I think it just, when you are a small business, you don't have that safety net to actually take that time out. The pressure must be immense.
Exactly that. And like you said there, for the big corporates, it's a little bit easier to put those systems and whatnot in place. It's harder when, you are a smaller business, a subcontractor, for example. But I think there's an amazing opportunity there for some of the larger organizations to make sure that when we are on a site, one of our sites, okay, maybe you guys can't afford it because you're X part of the project, but we'll make sure that actually we're putting these places in space that when your workers are on our site, we're doing our bit to make sure that there's these these support mechanisms for people. The support is growing. We're seeing that there's, as the awareness grows, we see more investment and more fundraising for charities like Lighthouse Charity, for example. Some of these, mates in mind, great charities who are doing amazing work in the sector. We're seeing more support for them, which in return only supports the companies and the projects and the people down on the ground. That's amazing. Where there's pain, I believe we'll always try and solve those problems. And that's what we're starting to see. But this industry is built on problem solvers, like from the engineers that are solving maths equations to make buildings happen or to make intricate designs happen, to people in corporate and commercial who are trying to meet timelines and deadlines and procure materials from different locations and solving those issues to the lads on the ground who have got a mate who's not turned up or isn't doing too great and they're supporting him. Like, there is problem solvers at the heart of the sector. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And if we apply that kind of those ethics of solving problems to the challenge, which is mental health, then I believe that, I believe we can create some change.
Yeah, it's in our culture to want to do that. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Doing what we do.
Yeah.
So you spoke to some of our teams at one of our projects for a legal client quite recently. What stood out to you from some of those conversations that you had on the day, if you can remember?
First of all, the turnout.
Yeah.
I was not apprehensive, but I was, typically like, we got lads on site, the project's coming towards the end, high pressure. I was like, will people carve out some time to come to a mental health talk? Engagement can sometimes be tough. And straight away, room was full from start to end. That's amazing. I could see that people were really bought into the discussion, and that was brilliant. I had probably 10 conversations with men afterwards, in a room or in the space where we did the talk, 1-to-1. And, we often hear, oh, men don't like to talk, or, men don't want to communicate. Listen, if you create the space for them and it's the right environment, they will take the opportunity to chat to you, because the one thing that stood out is just the amount of weight that some of these people were carrying outside of work and that they were having to bring to work. High pressure, high performance environments. There's a healthy degree of stress. And, solving these problems and, getting a project over the deadline when you thought you were going to miss it or whatever, like there's a healthy degree of stress which can come, and sense of reward and winning and collaboration between your teams are all really healthy. But the healthy stresses of a high pressure role are always made that much more difficult when you have things outside, and it's when you bring in that stuff to work. It's when you allow people to take that mask off for a little bit and just allow them to be human without needing to be the senior leader or, the strong face for the team. And so those were some key things that came up. I think the biggest thing is, if you create a space for men, especially, because it was all men. There was women in the room, but it was all men who came and spoke to me. If we create that space for them, then, they will talk and they'll have the conversation. But I think what's really important from an organizational point of view and from a cultural perspective is, cool, well, if that's happening, let's make sure that the systems are in place to support with whatever that may be.
What, in your view, are some sort of simple strategies that could be put in place to make people feel like they've supported and they've got that space to be vulnerable and connect with one another?
The best way to support people is to help them feel heard, seen, and understood. When we talk about leadership and being a leader, one of the greatest tools that a leader has at their disposal is empathy, because when you have an empathetic leader, you see creativity of the person you're managing. If you're that empathetic leader, goes through the roof. Innovation goes through the roof. Their willingness to want to solve problems goes through the roof. That same concept between people can be transferred to business. And well, what does that look like between the actual business and people? It's feeling seen, heard, understood. Well, where can you start with that? That's like, let's speak to the staff on the ground. What is it they feel they need? What is it they're struggling with? What are the biggest pressures? Let's get some data. We have so much data in this sector around the way machine works and productivity around those sorts of things. Let's do the same with the psychological side of it, and the psychosocial side of it, and let's get data and feedback. Ask the questions. Because then if we ask the questions, and we might get some hard truths that come up, and as a business you have to be willing to bear those, that is the step towards creating change. But the actual act of even just wanting to hear them is amazing, because they're going to feel, okay, first one heard. And then it's like, okay, well, I take this data, I take this information, and I'm seeing this, and this come up. Well, wonderful. Well, what can we implement that can support some of those challenges? What are our local service providers in certain regions? How much investment can we put towards this? Like, what change can we create to mitigate some of those risks? Because they are risks at the end of the day, isn't it? In this sector, especially with the 750 suicides, the 2 a day, whatever those statistics are. So then we can, start to action some of those things. And I also think it's really important that you have that information first, because there's so much that you can do in relationship to well-being and mental health. So many bits of software, so all of this stuff going on that sometimes you can end up doing too much. Start with strategy that actually gets used, and you want to implement things that have real world return on the individual. But the beautiful thing is, and let's not shy away from the conversation, is you're going to see a return on investment, because productivity is going to go up, and it might feel a little bit painful at the start, but we're putting this money over here and we're not seeing it. Well, you keep doing it. You lay a strong foundation down, and you see and you build a real supportive culture where people are supported, they feel seen and heard, they come to work, they've got those really strong relationships, they've got the systems in place, they've got maybe the gym because they're traveling so much and they can't do that at home, so they've got a free gym membership, which is something that's really important to them. Like, when they have those things, you watch where that'll go, because the money that you invest, you'll make back on productivity through the days that aren't lost to mental illness anyway. And I believe that's possible. I think it needs to be a really organic change that's slow and steady, and that is implemented and measured, so that you can see it working, and we swapping things out when they're not, and rather than just throwing everything at everyone, really starting small and building with the systems of support.
I want to go back to empathetic leadership.
Mm-hmm.
In your view, do you think that's a quality that someone inherently has, or can it be taught?
I believe it can be taught. Empathy is understanding, isn't it? You can foster empathy through understanding, through having difficult conversations. Even if you're someone who has stigma around mental health and you don't understand it and you've never experienced it, and you're a high-performing leader, I imagine over your tenure and your time in the space, you're going to have had a suicide on the site. You're going to have been or lost someone you've known the name, or had someone in your family. Sometimes it's a pivot to have those conversations, to understand a little bit more. If a worker comes to you and is struggling, just being open and human, saying, I'll be honest with you, Jack. I'll be honest with you, Jack. Listen, mate, I really don't understand mental health, and I'll hold my hands up. I don't know much at the moment. Can you give me a bit of an insight into what your journey's been like? Because I really do want to know more. And straight away, like, if we see leaders using that sort of language. And being human, what's that going to do to then the teams and the staff? That then has to be backed up by action. So we can't be having those conversations, and then when Jack's not wearing his PPE properly or whatever, we ended up disciplining him or whatever, when we know that 3 weeks ago he just lost his mum or something, So I'm a great believer that it can be nurtured as a skill. So we're definitely heading in that direction of change happening in the sector, which I think is a beautiful thing. Is it happening quick enough? No. I think, when mental health and the well-being of our people is at the same level and has the same level of commitment that we have had towards PPE to get it to the point where everything was covered, amazing. And you look at that as a process. It starts with the people at the top. It starts with the big boys at the top, and then it will filter down through the sector. The idea that like PPE super important when all the big projects over, however many years it's been implemented in now to get to the point of the 5-point PPE. You'd still have those ground level kind of like sites, or kind of your the smaller labourers who weren't really in line with PPE. Now you'll drive down the street and you'll see people with the correct gear on, vests on. That never used to be a thing 10, 15 years ago. So it's trickled down. Why can't we do the same for mental health? There's no reason why it's not possible. And I think the other thing is, as we have these conversations, as we see organisations truly invest, because it's going to take investment into supporting the people, into supporting the contractors on some of these big sites, into making sure that, the systems of support, and there's places, whether it's the physio, whether it's whether it is a gym membership because the lads are travelling away from home, whether it's policies to keep people within regions so that they're not having to travel and we can give them continued work in a location that's close to home, whatever it is. Like, when we can see that level of support and organisations really pushing for change, then that awareness around why it's important to look after yourself also filters through the ranks of employment. And this is why I said it's been refreshing to hear some of the conversations we've been having over the past year or so, because that is starting to happen. If we can create that sort of culture, and because what an amazing sector. I think we see headlines in the media, they're always negative when it comes to engineering or construction. Yeah, and it paints sometimes a tough picture. There's been delays on this, or there's been a collapse here, or this. If we have companies shouting about, actually, when you come to work for us, this is what we've put in place to make sure that you're supported as a human. Like, what an attractive proposition for someone who is really passionate about building, buildings or construct or labouring or whatever it is. Let's get that change there, and it attracts people back to the sector, which is the sector which helps the world run. I think people forget that it literally is like your buildings, it's everything, isn't it? It's your infrastructure. Everything would stop without it. And so the importance of looking after the sector should be, and the people within it should be just as huge.
Investment is intentional. You don't do that by accident. So I totally understand that sort of concept of it trickling down. If you make that investment, then coming back to the point around sort of a war on talent, is an incredibly competitive sector. We are competing for the best of the best out there. When you've got a culture that works and sort of speaks for itself, it's doing the job for you. Have you had a like hell yeah moment recently? And if so, like what? Why?
One of the first talks, I might get emotional at this part as well. One of the first talks that I ever did was at some schools down in Surrey. It was brilliant, and I really enjoyed the talks, and it was like 3-4 years ago. And I had the school reached out and said, look, I have this lad that I really want you to mentor. And he had lost his dad to suicide when he was young. Same as me, and wasn't turning up to school. Attendance was out the window, was getting involved in really difficult stuff outside of school. I met him when I went down to the school, and he was brilliant. Like the way he held himself, the way he's carried himself, the language that he used, just his like you could see his soul. Anyway, I started mentoring him. We managed to increase attendance a little bit. I got him back into the gym and training. Did some boxing with him when I went down to the school again to visit. But after the mentorship ended, we stayed in touch here and there, but I didn't hear from him too much. We used to drop in every probably like 4 or 5 months. And then probably about last year, I got a call from him one day, and he was doing some labouring work, and he's like, Dan, I really don't like what I'm doing. Like, I've got this vision. I want to be a public speaker. I want to do what you do because you've had such an impact on my life. Will you start mentoring me? Like, is there any way you can help? And I said, listen, I'll mentor you for free. And he'd made some amazing changes from himself. He'd come away from some of the gang stuff he was involved in, and just the difficulties around his hometown. And got him back into the gym, got him a training plan, started working on his mindset, was working on that growth mindset and helping him outline a vision for his future, which is brilliant. And one of his goals was to have his first public speaking talk back in the area that he's from. And literally last week, the week before, I got him his first booking back at a school in the area that he's in. So he's going to be working with me in the business, which is great. And I'll probably look at bringing him on. You don't know that yet, so if you're listening, Josh, there's your surprise, there's your gift. Do you know, like, that for me is the closest it will ever come to my why reason. We talk about like doing the right thing. Like, I didn't want to charge him. I didn't, that was just something that was important for me, and I was able to be of service to this young lad. And you want to see, like, when we got that talk. When we got that talk booked in, he was on the call and I just let him run it. He was like a born salesman. Like, that moment for me was huge because I came off the call and just started crying myself, I'll be honest. And I had a challenging time in business at the start of the year, really challenging. And I remember, like, I'd got so caught up in like financials of business and this stuff going on. And like that moment just grounded everything. That moment with that kid, like that's the reason I do everything that I do. To give him that energy in that life through just being of service a little bit, but that's transferable. That is a concept, doing the right thing. We talk about service. The construction sector can be lonely for a lot of these lads. When you're lonely, you have an increase of cortisol in the blood, increase of anxiety and depression. Service is like the antidote to all those things. It's the antidote to stress. It's the antidote to anxiety and depression. It's the antidote to feeling alone. It builds communities and ties communities or businesses together. Service does, helping each other out, going above and beyond to support people as humans, and everyone is capable of that. And I wish more people knew the power of service, whether you have lost someone to suicide, and so you put an hour aside every week to get involved with an initiative in work so you can impact people, or you get out your comfort zone and you do a public speaking talk, or you take the initiative on yourself to set up a group around mental health because you lost your dad to suicide, whatever it is. Like, I wish more people knew the feeling you can get from impacting someone's life in such a positive way, but with your difficulties at the root of the service.
That's a very practical thing that people can take into their lives. And it's And I think fairly accessible as well. It doesn't take that
Yeah,
much to give back.
100%.
And it's something that you can do every day and you can start right now.
So if we are constantly saying how grateful we are when this is a little thing, like when someone does something or goes above and beyond, sometimes when we're in the busy chaos of things, we don't give them the thanks that's warranted in the moment. Like just being someone who gives someone full appreciation, just saying, listen, Ilka, thank you so much for your work over this past week. I know you've been really, really busy. I just wanted to take some time out to let you know that you've taken a great deal of stress off the pressure off my shoulders this week. And I want to thank you because it's been a massive support.
Yeah.
And I've been going through some stuff this week at home as well, and it's been great. So I just want to thank you so much. And if there's anything I can do to return the favour, please let me know. So when we receive an act of service, I think it's like we're 68 times more likely to return it within 24 hours to another stranger. And so that constant kind of ecosystem, that culture of someone gives, we give, can be very powerful, but often easy to forget in the bombardment of deadlines and tasks, which is normal.
Yeah.
And so the reminder of those things through behaviours that are instilled into the business, do the right thing, whatever it might be, maybe is a great way to just bring people back to those values.
You have mentioned fitness quite a few times in our conversation today.
Yes.
It's obviously quite important, so it's made quite an impact. How's that been for you?
It's been integral. Ever since 16 years old, found the gym. And, I used to skip college to train twice a day, which, sorry, mum, she doesn't know that. But yeah, so like it was really important. And obviously I was going through a difficult time. Then I started to battle with depression, anxiety at that age. But fitness was the one thing for me that has always been a constant, because it is my meditation. It is the endorphins that release afterwards. It's the doing something hard so that life doesn't seem as hard, because it's pain when you're in the gym, when you're pushing it, whether it's running or whatever it is, like you're wiring your brain to be able to cope in difficulty. And so when you face it in life, you're more equipped to deal with it. But so much, it is the place that it's like whenever I need to reset, whenever I need to like come back to myself, or to get myself out of a rut. I don't need to go into the research, but we know the relationship between the mind and the body. And I think there needs to be more of a push on a grassroots level, especially so we have a generation in schools now that are moving less and less. It's the least moving generation that we've ever had. And I think there needs to be a push. And what I would love to see in the sector, for those who are training as apprentices in college or looking to get into construction and they're doing the qualifications or whatever it is, yes, let's talk about some of the technical skills they need to develop, but let's also talk about the importance of the gym and how to structure a training session, and the importance of cardiovascular health and, running or whatever it is. And like, if we embed that into people coming through colleges and schools and whether they're doing qualifications in construction, whatever it is, like if we can embed that as a part of the course, which is just as integral as the technical learnings, then we're setting them up for success. Fitness is the biggest thing that will, one of the biggest tools we can use to look after our mind, if not the biggest.
It's such a simple, accessible thing to do.
Yeah.
But the far-reaching benefits to society is so great that it's, I think, just a really practical strategy for folks.
Yeah. And we are seeing that as well. We're seeing it with young people. Less young people are drinking. We've got trends,
definitely,
like running on social media.
Yeah.
So many people are running now, doing the half marathons. You'll see them, or joining the run clubs, which are everywhere, which is brilliant. And so we're seeing that change. So let's support it and let's push it as an organisation to make sure that,
I think if you are struggling, it can feel quite daunting to start doing something about it, speaking to someone, speaking to a professional, being medicated. It all seems like quite serious steps. Getting up, moving, doing the basics, making your bed, tidying your space, going to gym. Those are everyday things that people 100%. Can do.
And I think this is the other thing is, there is in the sector, there is a culture of, like get on with things, like toughen up a little bit. And I think elements of that are really important. Like it's not about losing that, because that sort of mindset will push you to success at times, all the time unhealthy, because there's going to be times where we need to, again, go and slow down a little bit and actually take the pressure off and have the conversation and whatnot. It's about being able to switch between, I have to do it as an entrepreneur. I have to go into mindsets where I'm like, Dan, you're being too compassionate at the moment for yourself, and actually your compassion for yourself is fueling some of the negative behaviors for yourself.
There is a degree of accountability that needs taking at both the personal level and at a business level. The part about investment and being intentional about creating a good place for people to work is critical.
There is a degree of responsibility from the individual,
Yeah.
which I think comes from education. I think if we can equip the lads on the ground with the skills to look after themselves better and encourage more positive behaviours through education, through training, but then through also, and this is the onus of the company, if we are bringing lads across the country to travel to come to our sites, and think about when we were in COVID, I didn't have the community and the support around me in the spaces that I usually would in COVID, and that was really tough for a lot of people. We weren't seeing our friends. We know the impact of that loneliness. The lads in construction, they're facing this every single day as part of the job. So then if that is the environment that some of them are in, let's make sure we just mitigate some of those risks. The wonderful thing is this industry is built on people solving problems. And I think it just takes a little bit of an energy shift, and it might feel like we're stepping backwards, and it might feel like a backward step, and but it will be necessary to go forward, and the foundations that will then lay in the sector. If we can crack a system, if the sector can crack a system where we have a community and everyone comes together to create change and to support people, then you lay those foundations. And once that system works, and it might need some tweaking over a 5-year period, and most definitely will do probably, but once it's in, it's there. And it's like PPE, it's known now. And I think that's the place that would be amazing to get to, which I believe we can.
What's next for Dan? What's next for you?
What's next for me? I think what's next for me is, continuing to operate in spaces that need the services that LiveDex are offering, the leadership programs, the wellbeing programs, the speakers in the agency. For example, a lot of the stuff that we've been speaking about around not only actually creating impacts in the sector, but then also in communities, in schools. I'm launching a drinks business in June time, which is very cool, called Orb Drinks. So we will be changing. It's basically an alcohol alternative. So I'm trying to change the culture of drinking within corporates a little bit, and just have a healthier option, which is a non-alcoholic option, using nootropics that emulate the feeling of, or give you a bit of a social buzz. So we've got one drink that gives you a social buzz, one's that like a social relaxant, and then I have some other plans for LiveDex, but I'm not going to talk about them. But they're in the tech world, and that's kind of where I see the business growing to have both digital and in-person training, utilizing lived experience and storytelling to make the market-leading, world-leading training provider in relationship to kind of life skills, leadership, parenting as well is an important piece of us.
Yeah, please tell me how to do it.
Well, I'll let you speak to Natalie. She's brilliant, but that's the idea. That's the vision.
Amazing. That's really exciting. And get more speakers, inspire some of these folks to come and do some speaking with you. The most important takeaway for me from today is this concept of service.
It is that knock-on effect is when someone does good to us, we are more inclined to act on that within 24 hours to somebody else, even if it's a complete stranger. And so it's the chain reaction effect. And that's what I spoke about in it's kind of like the pay it forward movement. Like, for example, if I was to impact 2 people today, and those 2 people went on to impact 2 people each the next day, and so on and so on and so forth, how many days do you think it would be until the entire world had been impacted by a stranger if they picked 2 new people every time? So every generation was 2 new people. I today impact 2 people.
Yeah.
Yeah, say you 2 people in the room, because there is a videographer behind the camera, folks at home. And then you 2 go on to impact 2 new people each. And then those 4 new people impact 2 new people each, making 8 the next day. How many days do you think it would take?
I don't know. Years, surely.
Years.
Yeah.
32 days.
No way.
Yeah, you'd reach the number 8,589,934,591 in 32 days. So that's the idea of like the pay it forward. Now, obviously, that's if everybody acted on it the next day and the next day and the next day, impacted 2 people each, and they really did pay it forward, but it's kind of showing the capability in that chain reaction of just a small act of service, or just a little moment of human connection, which again can inspire potential.
It's like a pyramid scheme of service and well-being.
The marketing pyramid scheme of service and well-being.
I love it.